Hello, Malaysia. Malur, how are
Yes,
you? Okay, so you do
I.
realize, right?
Mm,
Sorry, you haven't finished. You. I asked you. I got so excited. Yes, how are you, ma'am?
I'm good, sir.
Nice. I got so excited because I've not seen you for some time. I haven't had.
Oh,
I've not been in the show with you for some time. So I got. I'm excited actually.
Shamini, if you are logged in, hear this. He's excited because he's co-hosting with me. Hear him, hear him, hear him. So, good evening, Ashok. I'm also very excited, but I must tell you, I'm even more excited because of the speaker, the guest that we have today. Because
Okay.
I know you and I and Sham probably have become his fan, and I know he's uncomfortable with it, right? So, before we go on, let me say hello. Hi, Sandeep. Thank you for joining us. We have, well, every week we have a special guest, but this guy is like the last speaker for the year and happens to be very,
Oh
very
yeah.
special. Last speaker we're not going to have. So, really, really very excited. I must say, Gerald is saying good evening to both good friends, Mallory and Harith, amazing leader on the show. There he goes, right? So, I met Harith quite recently in a conference, right? And his presence is quite loud. Why loud? Not your loud. It's his loud is different. So he's the
Okay.
managing director of Astrata, as we know. Now, what I really loved about him and admired about him is that he said all the things that perhaps I wanted to hear, because I found him very candid, very open, very honest with his thoughts, and very practical and real about leadership and the kind of challenges that we have. So, if for those who have joined us, Sandeep is here, but all the other people who have joined us, if you're here, please say hello to Harry. We're going to bring him up and, look at how he thinks about it differently, because the one thing that stood out for me in our pre conversation is
Hmm.
the fact that one of those things that he said he's not going to do is cut costs. And I think that's really impressive, because most leaders, when we talk about tightening the belt, the first thing is cut costs, then we look at all other things. So we want to see why Harith is different, right? Which is why we're going to bring Harith in quickly. Now, before that, Ashok, I'm sure you want to say something nice about Harith. I know you're a big fan.
Before I say something nice about Harith, yes, Gerald and Sandeep, good evening to both of you. Yes, and good evening to Sham too, who's logged in today. Nice.
Oh,
Okay.
he's in trouble.
I'm
You're
not
in
reading
trouble.
that part of. I'm not reading that part. Yeah. So yes, I am looking forward to Harith, and I must say, when the introduction music came on in the beginning, the very first slide, it talked about the safest ship in a storm is leadership, and I think that's Harith for you. So let's bring him on. Let's bring him on.
Woohoo! Woohoo!
Hi,
Good
Harith.
evening.
Good evening.
Hi,
Good
good
evening.
evening.
How are you, Harith?
Hi. Well, now after all those very nice introductions, I've got to say I'm sweating. I'm nervous. I don't know where to put my face. I'm so embarrassed, But yeah, well, I'm still here. You cannot see the red, but it's there. It's there.
That's a good space to start, because
Hmm.
I don't think, I mean, looking at just your journey, how you chose to join an organization. Well, first you worked with an organization for 20 years, and then you decide to take on your new role in Strata, and you joined just pre-COVID, and then COVID hit, right? I don't think anything we say is going to be any difficult compared to what you've been through in your leadership journey in your current role.
Yep.
Well, it might have been difficult, but I enjoyed the challenge. So, COVID or no COVID, it has been a great ride so far.
Okay, so now you already know what Harith is up. He's always looking for excitement. So tell us, I think Ashok and I have had the privilege of getting to know you and having a chat with you and becoming your fan. But help us understand, what was your journey like in taking on this leadership position during COVID? So first and foremost, you took on. So tell us a little bit about how you took on this position and then COVID hit and what it has been for you.
Okay, so firstly, I've got to say thank you to both of you for giving me this opportunity and giving our starter the opportunity to be here on this program. I truly appreciate it. Thank you so much. Um, I'm essentially a telco guy, to be honest. I've grown up being a telco engineer. I did a telco degree. I started out in places like Telecom Malaysia, Time Telecom, went on to Nokia, which is where you mentioned the 20 years, and then eventually somewhere in August of 2019. Um, After 20 years with my previous company, I said, okay, well, it's time to move on, time to learn new things. And I decided to switch industries completely and moved into Astrata, which is a company which is very good in what we call geolocation services, IoT, software for telematics. So, all those very nice tankers on the road, delivering fuel from one petrol station to the next. We protect those tankers with our devices, making sure that drivers turn up on time, or they're driving safely, and so on. Right. So coming from a telco background and moving into this, yeah, there's some commonality, but not so much. And then getting into this company, what had happened was, I decided from a time just before in my previous company where I'd taken a step back in my career. I said, okay, well, all of this is leading me in the right direction. I know what I want to do with my life. I really know what I want to do with my life. I've got a focus, and that focus is I want to be able to put people central to my passion in life, and that then led me into Astrata, taking on this role. I had big plans somewhere in August 2019 when I was interviewed for the role. I come in and the plan was all set, right? I knew exactly what I wanted to do with the company. And then guess what? You have COVID, right? And then you're sitting there locked up at home with a team of wonderful people. I've got to say, I've got some of the best colleagues who are working with me. um, I use the phrase working with. I don't like the phrase working for, to be honest. They all work with me. And we've had to go through a journey together of what uh, COVID had presented us with. Moving from an environment where the old style of working, being in an office, coming into work, has been thrown out the window. All plans of how you're going to engage a customer for sales, how are you going to look after a customer and deliver that fantastic customer experience? How is that going to work now, right? None of that can work in the COVID environment the way it used to before. So we had to change the way we worked in COVID. And that journey has been one which I got to say has been an eye opener for me, because not only has a strata changed, the world has changed, and we've had to adapt. That journey has been something where going through a phase where our investors and the people who are working very hard to make sure that we have a sustainable organization and business. The expectations don't change, right? They're not going to say, well, okay, just because of COVID, you're expecting you to lose business or to maintain your business. They still expect you to grow, right? Even during COVID. And I think it's only fair that any investor, any shareholder would want that. I mean, that's a basic, right? So how do you get that going in? And that was the journey that I'd taken during COVID, to understand people first. What can my people do? What are their strengths? How can we deploy their strengths to the field, even with all the lockdown conditions imposed? And it was a journey of learning, unlearning, relearning, unlearning again, because coming out of COVID, we had to unlearn what we learned during COVID. The whole team had to, and we all had to support each other, to do so. So if you ask what is the journey been, I would say it's a journey of unlearning, relearning, learning, whatever, but it's been up and down all the way, but a fantastic journey.
Yeah, I can see you love challenges. Just in the way you're welcoming your challenges. So it's yeah, it's like after you go through this like marathon, right? People usually say, "I want to take a break," but Harry is okay. Give it, give me more kind of a person. So what is really interesting in what you said, right, Harry, is that you had a perfect plan and then life had a different plan for you. What you did is you shifted course, you did whatever you needed to do to still meet your objectives, right? You
Yes.
need you knew that you had to get your service level up, and your sales level up, but circumstances have changed and the way of working have changed. And what you were saying is that, but you are very, very clear, it is people centric, people are your assets, and you work with them because you've got the best people with you. All those things you're very clear. I mean, these are things that people usually, leaders usually say, I've got the best people and all of that. But you were a new leader. That means you probably didn't have relationship so well established. So it's a lot more tougher because now you've come on board and you're not meeting people. You still have
Yeah.
to deliver your results because your stakeholders are not going to say it's okay, 6 months we understand COVID, right? So it's like
Yeah.
making it happen. So there are two things, right? One is business results, right? And another thing is relational, and you use your relationships to meet your business result. I mean, you are very stubborn about it. Like you want to do it through people, right? You're a people leader. Now, and you did say how you had to unlearn and relearn, and then you had to unlearn again because we went from COVID to working from home, and however you managed it to back to the office. So, can you help share with us if you take us through? Let's look at your first transition, which is going from whatever your face to face working, working from the office to working from home, perhaps slowly going into hybrid. What were some lessons that you learned as a leader, right? What were some things that
Sure.
you like learn, unlearn, and you had to relearn first before we go into your second transition?
Okay. So to answer that, what we mean by learning, right? Learning is not just okay. It's not just a session on training or coaching. It's a combination of various things. The first thing I would say that we had to learn when moving in from the traditional way of working pre-COVID
Mm-hmm.
to the new COVID environment was each role and each person. You mentioned just now about the people. I look at them as more than assets. You know, an asset is a nice way to look at it as a company and on a balance sheet, but these are human beings. These are and human beings by the very nature of the word. We are prone to error, but we are also able to excel in ways that we never imagined we can excel. So what did I learn, particularly from that pre-COVID stage, was that interacting with people the way that I was during the time of, I had only 6 months, literally from the time that I joined until COVID hit, right? And it's not enough. I'm taking care of organizations in Singapore, in Malaysia, in Philippines, in New Zealand, in Oman, in Qatar, and we have partners in Africa. So all of these are run by various people that I didn't have time to meet them and interact with them personally, face to face.
Mm.
So I had to first of all learn how am I going to make them my friend? How am I going to make each person feel that they know what they're working on and they know what the imperative result of their work is going to be? What is their mission? How can I help to guide that mission for them, for each person? So I took it as a personal drive to get to know every person in the organization, and that to me it is might seem daunting, but I loved it. Because when I get to know a person, I try my best to get to know them not as a professional only, but who they are, what makes them tick, you know, who's this person at home, even as far as that, because
Mm.
that behavior at home is how that can be translated to the office. So if you ask me, what have I learned? It is the beauty of COVID in that sense. It gave me the opportunity to dig deep into the lives of each and every one of those people. And I had to unlearn some old habits, which was the old habit of networking the way that we want to network, right? We like to network by just seeing people, but can I get value out of networking remotely with people? And I found that I was learning a lot by getting to know each person, each culture, and through my years of working, I've worked in multinationals and I've worked in different countries. I've lived in places like Taiwan, Thailand, Indonesia, in the UK, and so on. It gave me wonderful exposure to the cultures across the world, how people think, how people behave, and through that learning and putting it into use during COVID, I was able to understand, or I don't want to pretend as if I'm an expert of people, right? I'm not. But one thing is that I enjoy the interaction with people. And that learning exposure and taking what I've learned from the past, things like, for example, the tools that I have at my disposal, RASCII tools, the things, responsibility, accountability, and so on. And then we would have governance. These are things that I've had to now put into practice during COVID for each role, not just for the company. It's easy to write and develop tools for an organization, but to develop tools for each person based on their nature.
Mm.
And that was a learning process for me. And that was unlearning what I had before, which is developing tools for an organization, which are generic. Now I'm developing ways of working for each individual. Not easy, but fun, really, really fun. And so in summary, some of the things that for me, the key words that I use through this phase of unlearning and relearning: transparency, being very, very transparent. You ask me any question, I speak and tell you what I think without much of a filter. I trust people to a fault, to a point where if they make a mistake, I give them the opportunity to fix it. But if they can't fix it, we step in and help anyway, whichever way it is. But we trust them first. We trust them first, right? And discipline, because we have to unlearn what discipline is in the workplace when you are in a physical working environment. That discipline coming into a workplace where now you're remote, going to your favorite supermarket in the morning at 10 o'clock, that's unheard of, right? But then during COVID, you've only got specific hours where you can leave the house perhaps to go and do your shopping at the market, and you've got to go and do it during that time. You can't just say that I'm going to be working at a laptop during that time. You've got to still have the discipline to come back to your laptop and maybe change your working hours, maybe adapt your working hours. And so that required unlearning what your previous working hours were and becoming a bit more flexible and highly disciplined, focused on results by having the right KPIs in place, but still caring about who the person is and making sure that I'm able to facilitate their lifestyle. So I'm sorry for a very long answer to that question, but it has been, this journey of learning and unlearning. It's not a simple one,
Sure.
but at the same time, it's been fun.
So tell us one thing, right? Because what I liked about what you say is that, I mean, I think a lot of I think it's necessary now for leaders at any level, right, to actually customize individual development plan for everyone who reports to you, which used to be maybe under HR, right? Right. So now leaders need to take that into consideration because the way we work has shifted. So some new skills, and you've actually elaborated that really, really well, right? So, and you were able to scale it down, I would say. I think for a leader at your level, it's easy to be strategic because that's what you're prepared for. But what I'm hearing from you is that even though you were strategic in your thinking when you got into business, then you realize you need to roll your sleeves and take a few steps back and actually do it, right? Now, if there's one thing that you'd say that now you succeeded in transitioning really well during COVID, it seems to me, because you were agile and you were adaptable, you did a lot of things differently and you had the right people. Now that we've gone back to whatever the new normal is, more hybrid, what are some things that you are unlearning and relearning, Harith, very quickly? Just maybe
Okay,
two things.
so
Yeah.
two things. Number one is I've had to get all of us as a team to unlearn the remote working experience that we had before.
Okay.
That's number one, because it's easy to say, well, I'm working from home. And okay, great. But your customers are all moving into various working modes. Some customers have got hybrid working environments. Some customers are coming into the office 3 days a week and having a team A, team B. And I have to now, it's not as straightforward to say, can I go meet a customer just like that? Can I support a customer just like that, right? Can I provide the right level of customer service, the way that I used to during COVID? Because COVID, we had to have very, very strict rules about who could leave the home, for example. So we had to unlearn all of that stuff that we had learned during COVID. I mean, I had people who were on the ground taking a lot of risk because they still have to make sure that our supply chain vehicles were able to move during the time of COVID.
Okay.
Now, having to unlearn all those skills from the time of COVID, my team had to then understand why is it that they have to unlearn it. And I have to explain to each of them what is it that they're seeing in the field. What am I seeing in the field from my customer? What is the customer experiencing now? And we believe in 150% customer focus, literally, right? And what that means is that, okay, if the customer is evolving, so do we. So I've had to unlearn the stuff that we learned in the previous environment of COVID, coming back into post-COVID, where now you have a customer who's having his vehicle more on the road, for example. How do you manage, how do you maintain that in a post-COVID environment now? What does my operations team have to do? To give you an example, I don't have to go far. I've got customers in places like Sabah and Sarawak, where we've had to maintain presence and support remotely during that time of COVID. But now, after COVID, there is a presence on the ground required, and my support team have to now travel. And you know what it was like after when they opened the doors for traveling, not easy. So we've had to unlearn the remote working from before and now relearn traveling, right? And traveling post-COVID is completely different from traveling pre-COVID.
Right.
So all of this are stuff that I would say, the two things is basically how my team responds to the change of environment again. And the second is, how does the customer's change of environment impact my team as well? So that would be the summary of it, effectively.
Yeah. So I'm just curious, right? So how do you deal with the pushback from your team members? I'm assuming there were pushbacks, right? Because what I'm clear, what I like about what you said, what I'm clear is that, okay, if we need to do whatever it takes to unlearn and relearn to cope with customer needs. Yes, because we're here to serve the customer. So customer needs has changed. So it's not whether what you like or what you've learned during COVID or what is effective during COVID, right? Now we need to work around how to meet the customer's needs or how to serve the customer better, right? So, and most leaders, one of those things that we are dealing with is the pushback from the employees to say, but it worked during COVID. Why can't we just continue?
Okay,
Right?
it's a great question.
Yeah.
So I get what you're asking, and okay, pushback is natural. All of us are human beings. We have personal motivations, not just professional ones, right?
Right.
So when an employee, a person, pushes back, we have to understand what is motivating them to push back, first of all, right? Why are they even pushing back in the first place, right? What's the circumstance that is leading them to push back? This is not about finger pointing and finding fault with that person, but understand the circumstance in which they're pushing back. So I'm a professional coach as well as the managing director of the company, and I'm a coach to each and every one of my employees and to my team. And I do one-to-one sessions with them to understand their personal motivation, what makes them tick, like what we had discussed earlier a little bit. And through that, I understand why they're pushing back. Some people a little bit more difficult than others to reach a common ground of emotional and mental safety per se, where they
Mm,
feel there is a comfort zone. They don't want to leave that comfort zone. But at the same time, I've got to understand it, right? It's not difficult for me to understand it,
Mm.
but then now we've got a mission for the company. Now, if they're pushing back and it makes sense,
mm,
I need to adapt,
mm,
not necessarily them, right?
mm.
Why is it that if they are pushing back, why can't I just listen to them? Why can't I understand that pushback in a way that perhaps maybe I need to change something? Because after all, if I can custom make a RASCII for a role for that person, why can't I change that RASCII for that
Nice,
role for that person?
nice, nice,
That's
nice.
so that's how we deal with
Okay,
the pushback. There's so many ways of doing it, but
nice.
listening to them is first.
Nice. So I think it brings back to what you said, you're people centric and you spend time building relationship, and you spent a lot more time, you said, during COVID, getting to know people, not just professionally, but personally, what's happening in their life, because you needed to then, figure out how to help them manage their life so that they can manage their work better. You had already said that, and you've actually nicely tied it up to say now, there will be pushback. You know what? I'm going to try and understand why you're pushing back. At the end of the day, we want to know how to make it work for our common mission, which is actually to serve the customer. And what I also loved is that what you're saying is that, well, if you're going to tell me things, I'm going to listen to you. And maybe, if you make sense, I will make the change. I'm not expecting you to change just because you're pushing back, because the pushback might be valid. So you've actually just given us an example of how you practice all the things that you say,
Mm.
that first, to be people centric, to listen to them, to get to know them at the personal level, understand how to make them feel safe at it. I think you're one of the rare leaders who say how to make them feel safe mentally and emotionally, how to bring that together, knowing what's actually bothering them, and let's work towards the purpose, the mission, and it doesn't matter who has to make the change. What is important is the change needs to happen for us to serve the mission. Fantastic. But
Yep.
see, a lot of leaders at a strategic level cannot, will find like, hey, you mean it almost sounds like I'm micromanaging. I have to do so many detailed things, And I suspect, Harith, this has got something to do with some lessons, that some things that you did, because I think one of
Okay.
the most amazing things, stories that I remember about you, you did talk about taking a step back in your career, right? Which means that you literally chose to take a step back, i.e., a demotion, and that had probably shaped you to be in touch. So tell us a little bit, help us understand how you, when you took a step back in your career, how that influenced you in what you're doing.
Sure. Thanks for that. And again, in the spirit of being candid, I will give you that perspective now. So, through my career, I'm used to climbing up a ladder. I was an individual contributor in many cases for different roles. Whether it was pre-sales or and so on. And then I moved on from that into more leadership type of roles. And then came a time where once I reached a certain level of leadership, I had to take a step back for two reasons. Number one, I had certain personal family circumstances that required me to be more present in Malaysia, and I could not move countries.
Okay.
And I made that choice personally to stay back. I know, Mala, you and I have had this conversation before. I've always never thought of it as a choice. My family comes first. My friends, they come first, right? So taking a step back was a no-brainer for me. Then I realized when I was taking that step back, here's an opportunity for me to now come back into an individual contributor role and learn about what has changed for an individual contributor. What has changed for a sales? I was a salesperson, right? And what has changed for a salesperson? And my God, the change was dramatic from the time of when I was a young man. Now you can see from my hairline and everything else, I'm not that young anymore. I think my LinkedIn photo is probably needs to be changed, probably, right? not a young man anymore, but when I was a young man in an individual contributor role, chasing numbers was as simple as going out there, meet the customer, get the purchase order, bring it back in. There was a hunger for the business. There was a tremendous appreciation for values and culture, but then technology happens, right? Evolution happens, people's mindset changes, so personality of the people at the workforce. I was a fairly, well, middle-aged salesman when I took that step back, and in a workforce of very young salespeople as well as older salespeople. And I could see that the personality of the workforce had changed, that what used to be innovation before has now become commodity. you know Technology being introduced means that all of us are now working at hyper speed. I would have to run to a customer in the past, where walk into a customer, wait 2 hours to get a meeting. Sometimes they turn up, sometimes they don't, but now I've got WhatsApp and I can skip that entire process and get an entire conversation done over WhatsApp, emails, team sites, collaboration, whatever you might call it, right? So life has changed for that individual contributor. It has become hectic. I would say it's become very hectic for
Nice.
them.
Yeah.
And so then when I took that step back, and well, it gave me my time with the family, but there was a very hectic job as well, and I could see how things have changed for an individual. When you step back into a leadership role at that stage, you you would naturally empathize with the people who are working with you, who are individual contributors, and you would naturally respect what they do in that role. And that's where, then, you see, as a leader, it's very easy to only see and believe, but to not see and believe takes a lot more effort, right? To not see and trust that they're getting their work done, perhaps giving them the tools to get that work done, and being able to still be visible somehow with the technology that we have at hand. That has changed, right? In the old days, when you're an individual contributor, you had your boss sitting right next to you, perhaps, right, watching every move you make. Now your boss can be 3,000 miles across the ocean, and they've got to trust that you're actually, when you say you're working, you're working. When you're getting results, you're getting results. If you
Yeah.
can prove it, you can prove it, right? So things have changed, and that step back, in my mind, was a step forward. I look at it as a step forward, and my encouragement to any leader is, get back into the ground,
Wow.
go and see how the workforce is doing,
Wow.
find out from the field, right? And there is a significant difference between
Yeah.
a line manager and leader.
Mm.
The line manager is just that. They're just a line manager. They're managing KPIs. The word manager here is very key. It's you're managing KPIs. You're managing maybe tools or approvals. But when you talk about a leader, people are central to the passion that you have as a leader. You are the voice of your team, and I like to say that I would like to believe, maybe I'm not all the time, but I would like to be. And you sometimes have to be the courage and voice of the voiceless.
Wow.
That is tough,
Yeah.
right? It is
It
tough
is. It is.
sometimes.
It is.
You're going to lose some things. You're going to lose
Mhm.
sometimes, but when you win, wow, it feels good.
Yeah.
To be the guy who holds up culture, the guy
Sure.
who helps to coach and mentor. Coaching and mentoring, to me, is a buzzword. Everyone can say, well, I can coach, but really
Mm.
structure in coaching and
Y-
mentoring is
Harith, I totally now I really get what Gerald has said, written down there. He said he knows your leadership wisdom, right? And a lot of us are going to be taking a lot of golden nuggets. I totally agree. Just that short half an hour or so, what it's taught me about you is you are still a student, a humble student, you know, and you have a lot of deep level of empathy for people, and I can see it in the choice of words that you're using. For example, you don't say I work people work for me. I work with people. You know, people are not just assets, they're humans. You even said you're here to help facilitate others' lifestyles. And you even
Yeah.
spoke about customers are evolving. So you I can see you have put a lot of deep thought into the leadership role, the line manager's role, and all of that. And it's fantastic, you know. Now, all that is important as a leader. I get that. Now then,
Yeah.
as the other flip side, the business.
Sure.
The business itself. Because we all
Yeah.
got the relationship, we got the leader, now we need the results. Now,
Sure.
you early on in the show, Muller talked about something about cutting costs, right? But you didn't go that
Yeah.
way. For example, you were focusing on growing the company. You had a few choices. You can go on the pure financial strategies, purely look at your P&L and go from that point of view. Or you could have looked at opportunity as a way to grow the organization. But you focused on people, right? You focus
Yeah.
on people. So my question is this: I know you've been speaking about people, but now here is you said I don't see, but I still need to trust. Now, how do you bring all of that? What motivated you to focus on people as opposed to cost cutting to grow your business?
Well, okay. First of all, to me, cost cutting, if done in isolation, is a complete disaster.
Okay.
Um, I don't like the word cost cutting because that's a very, I don't want to say it in a rude way, but it is a finance perspective. It's like you said, a P&L,
Yep.
perspective of a business. But what's business? It's the people that you have, and that's why I say they're more than just assets. They are human beings that if we were to understand what their strengths are, and again, I do not profess in any way to say that I'm an expert, but by trying my best to learn about them, to learn about their strengths, their
Okay.
capability, each person, and then I can dimension and design a strategy and a set of tactics over a longer term. When I do that, when I put together the strategy around the people that I have, the strengths that they have, it's of course, we have a mission to be able to deliver the numbers. But, each person in the organization has a role to play on the road to revenue recognition. Each person in the organization, right? And I don't care whether you are an HR person, a finance person, whether you're a hardware guy, whether you're an operations, person who's looking after the customer, but that extreme focus on the customer, then with the strength that you have through the coaching of each person and finding out what can they do to step up from where they are to make customer delight a reality and not just,
Sure.
again, another buzzword, that then delivers revenue. It
Okay.
maintains the loyalty of the customer. And then you want to do the cost cutting after that. You know where you're going to cost cut. You
Wow.
know where to cost cut, right?
Wow.
Yeah, because you know who your people are, you know what they can deliver, you know what they need. And then, okay, then you start trimming down in places which you think, okay, there's some excess fat here and there, but it's not about the people and cutting. People are not cost. They're not cost. People are people. They're human beings, right? I mean, cost that's a different thing altogether, right?
That's right.
But to me, it's just first understand what you can do with the strength that you have.
Wow.
You
You
take
know,
every bit of potential, then yeah, let's talk about cost.
okay. I just love I love the way you think because it takes a lot of courage and conviction. And don't forget, you were just 6 months. You don't even know your people. You didn't know your people, and that's why you said you don't see, but you need to trust. And
Yeah,
even within that 6 months, if it was any other person, you would have said, okay, let's look at the P&L. Easier, right? Because I will look good for the next X number of months or years, whichever it is, based on your reporting. But it took a lot of conviction in you to focus on people, right? But there must be something from your past or your leadership. Why is it that you're so focused on the person? What is it that I know you talked about their strength, but what do you see the beauty of people?
Oh wow, that's a very difficult question for me to answer, Ashok. But let me give it a stab, all right?
Good job, Ashok. He has a difficult question.
Yeah, it's a tough question, primarily because I would say that um, my family, my friends have been a very strong influence on my life, right?
Okay.
Uh, the brotherhood that I have with the people around me, each person is part of a global family. And when I was with my previous company before this, getting to know almost every culture in the world, from every continent, you realize that every person with the culture that they bring, the value that they bring, you can have a culture in an organization, you can have a value in an organization, but the pillars behind all of that are the human beings that are in the organization, and they are the ones who represent that culture. They are the ones who represent that value. Yet at the same time, they are locals in their own country,
Yep.
right? And I have to still yet understand each person, like I've got a guy who is in Indonesia, and I know that that guy in Indonesia, if I get to know him much better, and I know his culture because I've worked in Indonesia, so I'm able to relate with him to understand what he's doing and to be able to help him do his job better, because it's easy to say, well, go and get more business in Indonesia. But fighting for business in Indonesia, maintaining a customer in Indonesia, even though Malaysia and Indonesia are very similar in many ways,
Mm.
is completely different. It's completely
Okay.
different, and that's got to do with the culture. So to answer your question, I think it is my experiences from the past,
Hmm.
working with all the different cultures and societies and the people that I've had. I'm very lucky. I'm honored and I'm lucky that I've had that opportunity of getting to know tons of people around the world. And actually it's my girlfriend who actually taught me this. She said, Harith, when you go for networking events, I was nervous, right? The first few times when I'd have to go and represent a company as a
Hmm.
networker and to get to know people, I would go in with the idea or the notion of business. And it was my girlfriend who said, Harith, go and get to know them first. Make them your friend, right? And then over time, if there's something that's going to come out as a business is good, but otherwise you've gained a friend. And I
Right.
thought, wow, that for me was wisdom beyond words, right? And I've got to say that I've learned from that too.
Right.
So
Thank you.
that's I hope that answers your question.
Yeah, I got it in your very first statement where you said it's the brotherhood. The way you look at people, you see everyone as one. It's a brotherhood, and that's what I took away, and that's how you see people. And Sandeep Kulkarni has a question for us here. Why do global leadership think people are just cost cutting than capital in today's time? I think it's almost like what we were asking, but he's got a question there.
Sure, sure. Okay, thanks, Sandeep, for the question that you're asking. Effectively, uh, businesses are built around balance sheet. It is effectively a business is really about delivering value to the shareholder, right? So for them, if I were just to look purely at cost as a form of eventually driving revenue, then people are a subset of cost. Yeah, that. Of course, if you look at it from a finance and a balance sheet perspective, a P&L statement, that's true, right? But at the same time, your second part of it, overheads in cost cutting than capital in today's time. You know, to me, it is about where you focus your investment as an organization, right? Let's say today I just stop investing and I have to now deliver based on the working capital of an organization. So it's very easy to say, okay, let's just cut some people, we can keep the organization steady and that's fine. But then that's only from the balance sheet perspective. We have to now think that when you're eliminating a headcount, what is the impact not just on the cost, which could be a positive impact, of course. But what's going to happen with that relationship with the customer? What's going to happen with the development of a portfolio? What is going to happen, let's say, if my salesperson were to bring business in 6 months' time? Um, If I cut that person now, will it affect the job of my salesperson? Because now my salesperson find it difficult to commit to a customer to deliver a certain project on time, right? So to come back and summarize your question with my answer, I would say that on balance sheet, yes, cost. But when we look at delivering excellence to a customer, that is not purely about cost, but that is about the person and their brain, their mind, their thoughts, and how can we use that to drive the business. That's
Right.
a completely different perspective,
Yeah. Yeah.
perhaps.
And again, you've demonstrated with what you're saying, right? Is it the courage? It takes courage and conviction to believe in the strength of people. Now, I know you open up the statement with Sandeep's question by saying essentially business is about delivering value to shareholders. I think I have a totally different argument about that. I'm not going to take this on in this channel. We'll have tea one day and we'll have an in-depth
Sure.
conversation about that. But
Ashok, I'm with you.
okay. But tell me something. Now, you're into 6 months, you see the value of people, you're focusing on the strengths, which is fantastic. It takes a lot of conviction. They are new to you, you are new to them. And now you need to start aligning everyone to that common shared purpose to drive that results, to add
Yeah.
value to the customers and to each other along the way, right? So
Yeah.
share with us. I know you mentioned a few times when you're talking to Mother about risky and all that, but tell us a little bit more in depth about the tool that you use. And you mentioned you customized it individually. Tell us a little bit more about how that had helped align everyone to drive the result.
Sure. Okay, so the first step is again understanding the role of each person in
Okay.
the org chart. Okay, when we know the role of each person in the org chart, the next step is then to understand how do they interconnect with each person. How does an operations person interconnect with an engineering person? What is I call it, for want of a better phrase, it's an interlock between departments. That interlock between departments then requires that each person understands where do they draw the line with the work that they're doing so that they're not crossing into somebody else's territory. And that's where then we talk about the Rasky tool, right? So in short, when you have a Rasky, well, I'm sure you can look it up, but just for simplification, it's about for a specific task, going down to the task of the person. Let's say if you are an operations executive, you're an interface to a customer.
Yeah.
What are you responsible for? How are you then accountable for that task? Or are you even accountable for it? Because typically in a Rasky model, you cannot be both responsible and accountable. I see a lot of people making the mistake of assigning responsibility and accountability to the same person. To
Yep.
me, I think ideally that should not be done, because there should be one person who's responsible and another person who's accountable for that responsibility. But there could be people who are then either consulted for that information or they could be informed, right? And what kind of support. And to me, that Rasky model, it should be the people who know each other well enough. And therefore, when you bring them together into a community where they begin to understand, okay, well, I'm the operations executive. I'm responsible for proactively maintaining my fleet. If I see something going wrong with my fleet, it is my job to make sure that I am able to identify the fault, know what I need to do with the fault. And if I can fix it, great, and story's done. But otherwise, it goes to the next level of escalation, which could be to the engineering department. And perhaps now I need to inform the salesperson so that it doesn't come as a surprise, or the salesperson doesn't get blindsided that, hey, there's something going wrong with the fleet, and here I'm trying to sell more stuff, right? So each person gets interconnected in this process, and I love it because it means that you see, everyone working together,
Yep.
literally like a waveform, like
Yep. Yep.
a unified energy form. And to me, it's like a beautiful song when you see an entire team gelling together.
Yeah.
For me, music is everything, and I can see a song in all of the way that they move together, right?
Right. Right.
And then you see the customer,
Yes.
and you start to see the customer's eyes light up, right? Because wow, they don't have to worry so much about their fleet. Yeah, I'm again not professing to say that we are the best customer service or in the world or whatever it is, but yeah, we're great at what we do. We have people who are passionate about taking care of the customer, and through these RASKI processes, the governance that I have in place
Hmm.
for the team. Over and above that, I've also put into place, certain regular mandatory meetings. We have sales briefings, we have engineering management discussions. These are all tools for people to collaborate. Doesn't matter whether you're in the same country or halfway around the world. Everybody is part of a system where, again, through these communication methodologies, they're working together and they understand. So I can almost guarantee you, if you were to pick up the phone and call my guy in Kenya,
Okay.
and you were to ask him, okay, what is the guy in Indonesia doing? He'll be able to tell you, even though
Wow.
there's no connection between them really. But it is because we have got people who are connected through the platforms that we have set up now
Wow.
and
Wow.
the collaboration that we have. So again, I hope I didn't stray from the
No, no,
from
no,
from the
no.
question, but
You apart from the fact that you told us that you love music, I'm a heavy metal fan, so I get it.
okay.
It's still music,
Yeah,
right? But
it
it's
is.
still the ebb
Oh,
and
everything
flow.
is
Yeah,
music.
it's still the ebb and flow.
It's
No,
the ebb
I
and
like
flow.
the
That's
fact
it.
that what you looked at was okay. I need to align everyone. So you brought in a tool that brings in a common language for everybody,
Yeah.
right? So what happens now is I know my responsibility, what I'm accountable for, and I know if I can't deliver that, who should I go to? So you didn't
Correct.
create silos, but what you did was you created collaboration
Right.
with
Correct.
one main intent. The intent was to deliver delightful customer experience. And that
Yes,
is why you
that's
said
the
the customers,
focus.
because the last thing you wanted from a customer was to call and then find out, oh no, no, that's not my department, somebody else, right? You
Yeah, exactly.
eliminated all of that. You brought in the
Completely.
collaboration with the tool. But you see,
Yeah.
again, is because you believed in people, their strength,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
then you provided each and every one a customized tool. And I think that's what you meant by for each role you had a coaching discussion, possibly.
Yes.
You know?
Yes. For each person, each role, we've had one-on-one coaching. I'm
Wow.
24/7 to the probably to the dismay of my family. I work all kinds of hours, right? To make sure that I can take care of my investors in the US. I work
Mm,
nights to take care of my customers in this part of Southeast Asia. I work the
sure.
daytimes, so, but it doesn't mean I don't have a life. I actually do have a life.
Yeah.
Um, and it's just that the whole point is when we talk about ebb and flow, it's making yourself accessible in
Okay.
these times.
Okay. And Sandeep has a very good question. All right. He's focusing on the fitness and wellness that you look in your organization while you focus on this, right? Which is to me is
Yeah,
about sustaining the momentum and energy of the organization, right?
sure.
So what are the steps that you took?
Okay, so first of all, thanks, Sandeep, for the question, right? And um, let me tell you this first. I don't have programs of fitness and wellness. I don't have, like an announced program, a structured program of fitness and wellness. What I do have is, because of the coaching methodology that we have a very flat organization. We know
Mhm.
what each person and their need is when it comes to fitness and wellness. So let me give you a few examples, right? In the Singapore office where I'm sitting right now, uh, we've got a whole bunch of people here who are cyclists. They love to cycle,
Wow.
and so we give them the freedom to, whatever time of the day they'd like to go out and cycle. If they find it's a good time of the day to do it, go out, go ahead, do it, right? Your health comes first. I mean, for me, the priority is only you are responsible for your own health. Don't put your work so far ahead of you that you forget about your own health or you forget about your family, because in the end, why are we working? Let's be frank, right? We are all working not just to earn money, but because we have to sustain a certain lifestyle,
Yep.
to manage a certain lifestyle. And Sandeep, to your question, how much of fitness and wellness is looked at? I look at it at a personal level. What does each person need? We might have a person who needs medical attention because of perhaps an illness that he have, and I have an example of that where he needs to travel back to his home country in China, for example, right? And oh yeah, we'll look into that. We help them to get that. I have a guy who is currently, for example, traveling to Qatar, where he needs regular medical appointments. He can't stay away from the country for such a long time. So what we do in that kind of environment is we say, okay, look, go to Qatar. World Cup is going on there. He's not going to watch the World Cup, by the way. He's going there to support one of my customers
Hmm.
during the World Cup because we have a system with them, and he needs to still come back for his medical treatment and maybe travel back again. Yeah, well, if absolutely needed, do that, right? But not at the but don't travel at the expense of your health, right?
Right.
So we have examples like this in pockets for each person, depending on what works for them. And I guess it's the privilege of working in a small organization. And in a giant organization, the way that I see it is, and again, why did I take on this challenge in the first place? One of the reasons is because I felt that if you can do this in a small organization for a subsection of people, can you take that same model and apply it back to 100,000 man organization, man,
Yes.
woman organization, right? You, why can't you do that?
Yep.
So that's. I hope that answers your question, Sandeep.
Okay. Thank you very much for that. And I know Sandeep has one more question, which I'm going to answer for him. His question is: are global leaders, in true sense, visionary leaders besides business growth and results? Sandeep, I think Harith has just demonstrated to us why he is that visionary global leader. I will dare say visionary global leader because he has the courage, the conviction to put people first in the business, in the way he delights customers, right? He's brought in the tools to help each and every individual employee in the organization up their performance levels. And they did it in a collaborative way, right? Where they don't only focus on themselves, but each other and deliver results at the same time. So, yes, global leaders are true, not everyone, but I think Harith has just demonstrated to all of us here that he is a visionary leader. And what he has done for a smaller group, for him is 100 over people is small. It can be scaled to 1,000 over, right? So yes, we got. Oh, we're already wrapping up. So, Malar, I know you have one last question or statement.
No, I just wanted to say, if I may say it now, taking on Harith's time. I think what I really loved about all that he said, especially the bit on fitness and wellness and the example he gave, right? I like the fact that while he's thinking of, what at one point he said, look after your own health, right? He's basically saying that, but in a very caring way, right? So
Yep.
if if you need to contribute to the organization, contribute. We need you to contribute to the organization, but never at the expense of your life, right?
Right.
And that's what wellness is all about, right? Whereas it's not about, because a lot of times wellness is taken, you die for the company, but we will facilitate it with medical attention and whatever. No, that's not what he's saying. He's saying, no, we want you to contribute, but never at the expense of your life, whether it's your health or your family or whatever that's important for you. And I think That is a major differentiator. Okay, I'm done. I
Right.
should passing it on to
Right.
you to close because this is too
Yeah.
good.
No, it's too good. Thank you again, Harith. And yes, I do agree, like what Sandeep is saying, all your golden nuggets. Thank you for sharing with us why it is important to put people in front of the business, like what you have done. Not just talk about it, but with courage, with conviction, even put in the right tools, processes, mandatory meetings, like what he mentioned, to help drive the business. So these are the leadership. I mean, our theme for this month, and you're the last speaker for the year.
I'm
Is
honored.
leadership
Thank you.
trends and challenges going on to 2023. And for all those who are listening in, I think Sandeep has really summarized and provided us ideas, inspiration to take us to the next level for 2023 onwards. So, with that, thank you very much, Harith. We'll have the tea,
Thank
we'll
you.
debate over heavy metal music about
Indeed,
business, and we'll invite
for
Malan
sure.
along. So, with that,
We'll see you.
Okay, thank you, Harith. Harith,
thank
I
you.
know we need to get you off with 7:02, but I'm going to be a typical Malaysian and say, is there anything else you like to say in a, as a your last sentence, parting, goodbye to the people who are listening now and who will actually watch you later?
I got my over the nervous bit because noticed probably I had a few friends or family who are listening who were saying, "Well, we're going to ask you the tough questions," and I didn't get any of those. So, thank you, friends and family, for not asking those tough questions. Saved the
Okay.
day for me, and thank you to both of you for giving me a wonderful opportunity to present today. Thank you so much.
No, thank
Thank
you.
you. Thank you. All right,
Thank
I'm going
you.
to say bye and get him off the screen. And you are with me now. Whoa, that was good, isn't it?
It is wonderful, wonderful. I just loved his energy. He's so calm. His voice is so soothing, and he has a lot of conviction behind what he says. And I love the fact that he's even demonstrated because at the end of the day, for businesses, it is about results. And I love the way that he brought in people. He put people in the center of the business and made that conviction, that courage, and said, "This is the only way." And he found the solution. It wasn't just a philosophy; it was an action idea.
Yeah, he's the real example, or in that we've had in our show of
Yeah,
quiet leadership.
that's right.
Yeah, he talks the walk. And
Yep.
so, yeah, I think we're praising Harry too much. And
Too
that's
much.
like, yeah, I don't think he can take it. He might not have coffee with us. So let's stop there. So,
Okay.
Ashok, thank you. I think you
Thank you,
really,
Malan.
I can see the kind of energy, Harith has passed on to you. But,
Hmm.
one other thing is I now need to check out his girlfriend because she seemed to be very wise. So I need to check her out too. But that's besides the point. So with that, for those who've joined us, Sandeep specifically, thank you for joining us. Thank you for the question. For those silent audience, at the back where you've been quiet, thank you for joining us. I hope you've gained as much as we did. With that, this is Malar from Malaysia, Kuala Lumpur, saying
And Ashok.
goodbye until we meet you next week. And
Bye bye.
bye, Singapore.
Bye.
Okay.